this onion, what was it that called you to start sharing your findings?
I mean, this is kind of be a very generic answer, but wish that I had somebody that I could talk to that was like me. And I had cousins, I had a mom. My mom wasn't really momming. And my cousin, we were all on the same kind of journey ourselves that I could go to and bounce ideas off of, or somebody who's experienced a little bit more in life, who's actually experienced like real life. Yeah, I just wish that I had somebody that I could talk to and learn things from. And so when I share for myself, my younger self. I share for my future self. I share so I can go back and listen to the things that I've said. I'm like, okay, that's where I am, or that's where I was. Don't forget. Don't slip back, right? Because again, we ebb and we flow, we expand and we contract. We take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But you have to have a baseline of where you are at all times. And so when I share my experiences, it's really I'm just documenting where I am at this point in time in my journey. And if it reaches somebody else that is also there or is thinking of being there, they can feel free to reach out to me, to talk to me, or to just even listen to what I've experienced. And they can use that to guide where they're going next.
I have been navigating through this discomfort of being forced to meet myself in a more intimate way than I had the opportunity before, without the distractions and with the time literally dedicated to it. So I would love to hear, how do you navigate the discomfort of outgrowing a version of yourself?
First clue that I'm like the first indication that presents itself as growth is me wanting to go back and do the old things that I used to do. Okay. And I'm going to give you an example. I stopped drinking alcohol. I don't use marijuana. You already know I'm on a no spend journey, shop
Mm.
in my own closet, not purchasing things that I don't need, like being super conscious about what I'm doing with my money. And the first indication that I'm growing is that it'll probably be a stress response that pops up. And I'm like, ooh, I could really use a glass of wine right now. Or dang, I want to smoke a joint. Like, oh, it sounds so good to just sit back. Or, oh, I need those shoes or those high waisted sweatpants from Joe or Brown or something. Like the old version of me will pop up. And I'm like, if I give in, then I revert back to that old person that I used to be. Okay. And so that's the first indication that I'm changing. And the hard part is sitting through it until that passes. It will pass. It might take a couple of days for the old version of you to stay behind and for you to move forward from that, but it does pass. And the journey is really navigating who you are between that old version of you and the new version of you. Can you make it through the hard point? We're meant to do hard things in life. And the more challenging our circumstances are, the easier it is for us to navigate through the next thing that's going to be even more challenging. And so I find myself, I want to say, distracting myself a bit when those old versions of me pop up. And I'll do something like bake. I love baking. It's a new hobby of mine. I also love eating my baked goods. So I have to work out just a little extra these days. But it's really about what healthy thing can you do instead of the thing that reverts you back to that old version of you. And then I have reverted back so many times, like probably 100 times. And this was a big challenge for me in 2023. I went through some hypnotherapy and I'm like, why is it when I set a goal, I don't fulfill that goal? I mean, I can set financial goals, professional goals like that, and I'm good. But when it comes to why can't I stop drinking? And it all comes back to recognizing and understanding how valuable you are to yourself, how much you love yourself, and how much you're willing to show up for yourself. Because you can show up for somebody else, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, why give somebody or something else your time instead of you? And so, yeah, I mean, you can slip back, but just think of how much you love yourself and how much your younger self would like look up to you and be like, oh my gosh, you made it through the storm. I am so proud of you. You are exactly who I want to be when I grow up. and maybe kind of just looking at things from different perspectives instead of the present person perspective. So, yeah, grace, I'm kind of a tough love person. While having grace is super important, I also am like, you can do it. You can do the hard thing. Just stop fucking crying about it. Put your big girl pants on. It's gonna pass. Preoccupy yourself.
What is that component of self-love? Because I myself, I preach self-love. That
Mm,
is the name of the game.
yeah.
And then when I close my door and I'm with my journal, or when push comes to shove and I'm in that stress response, yeah, there's a narration that goes through my head and there's a little bit of badgering. And so there is that dichotomy of knowing that I do love myself
Mhm.
and knowing that the love exists within me. And also, those little voices do exist, and that our ego is a funny fucking bitch at times. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the ego. The ego is very I, me, my centric, right? And it's a hard separation to differentiate. It's a hard thing to separate the actual you, the you inside here, your spiritual you, your higher self you, and the ego you. And I like to say my ego is this brain that sometimes won't shut up. And it's just like just shut the fuck up. Right.
Mm.
And I have a trick for that. And I say release, just release. And then I take a deep breath in and out. And that release just kind of allows those thoughts to pass by. Or I might do some Reiki where if my right hemisphere of my brain is extra active, I'm just going to pull these thoughts out and let them go into the ether because they don't belong to me. But that component of self love and self worth is the showing up, is weathering the storm. To me, it's really just staying with the things that you say that you're going to do. That's what the self love is. My personal alignment routine, I'll say, consists of waking up early, 4:30 a.m., making my matcha, doing some meditation, some breath work, some tapping, some toning, having breakfast, going to work, working out, getting the dogs, walking. It's, and then winding down for the evening. I don't always do those things every single day in that order, but I do a form of those things. And those things are the things that keep me grounded and keep me feeling really good inside. And again, if I don't do those things, I'm not going to pick on myself about it, but I'm like, I could do better. I could do better, right? And some days you just don't have the energy to show up in everything that you're doing. And on those days that you don't have the energy, you just have to be like, I don't have the energy today. I don't. So I'm going to take a self-care day. And maybe my self-care day is going to just be stretching. I'm just going to breathe. But it's like when the old you comes through and it's like, oh, go have a glass of wine or whatever it is, the old that you're trying to navigate from, it's not listening to that version. And it's doing the opposite thing of having the glass of wine. And that's like a flight response, right? So it's being able to identify what stress response am I experiencing right now? Like, and then why? Why am I experiencing a stress response? Oh, because work was so heavy. Work is always going to be there. I'll be fine. I'll be okay. Go breathe through it.
I really love of having that distinction between who you were
Mm-hmm.
and what you're building and honoring that process of change,
Mm-hmm.
honoring that process of pain.
Yeah.
What does cultivation of trust look like?
It only happens once you go through the things that you say you're going to do. And so it could be something small. It can
I'm
start off
agreeing.
with, yeah, it's like, yep, our angels are telling us yes. Cultivation of trust. So I've learned that in the past that it was so easy for me to divert back to the person that I was because I didn't have any self-trust, because I always broke my promise to myself. And so it really started with the first time that I actually followed through with the things that I say I was going to do was I did this like 6-week workout thing from home, right? I just follow, there's like a creator on Instagram, you purchase it for $20, you follow her for 6 weeks, and then you're done. Old me would have never followed. I'm like, I'll just do it when I want to do it. I'll kind of do my own thing, whatever, I'll work out, whatever. And then the first time I actually followed through from the beginning to the end of the program, I literally broke down and cried for like a fucking hour, like a baby. so silly, but that was the first like milestone for me into being able to cultivate more trust. I'm like, ooh, I could do that. What's next? Crawl, walk, run. You
Mm.
take baby steps until you get to a point where you're constantly in the flow.
Yeah, you're not going to run the marathon or the triathlon if you haven't started with a 5K kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Some people do. I don't know. I'm not a runner.
Bless up.
Yeah.
Next. Yeah. I really love how you talk about honoring your past selves because that's something that I myself have been unearthing a lot recently. I find myself with that voice of having a lot of shame and having a lot of guilt for these past versions of myself and things that I have done.
Hmm.
And if you boil it down, it's I didn't do anything so crazy that I need to still, years later, be thinking about it and feeling remorse over it. Like, that is something that I'm really intentionally looking at with through a lens of love,
Hmm.
because that ultimately is my heart. I believe the only way to move through it and to move past it is giving it that love. Because for so long, it was so guilty and so shameful of what I did and how I acted that it's only when you can say, yes, and I forgive you, I forgive me,
Yeah.
I still love you.
Last year in January, February timeframe, I started also unearthing a lot of shame that I felt for past versions of myself. And when I pulled the thread on those things that I did, I was very young, 13, 14, 15, like even probably younger than teen years. A lot of it was because I was missing a component in life. Okay. And maybe that component I was missing was a nurturing, loving witness. And I don't necessarily mean a parent, but somebody who witnesses you and can co regulate with you, who can be there with you and soothe you in a certain way. And a lot of the things as adults that we look back and we're like, that was so fucking cringy. And I can't believe that I did that. When we transport ourselves back to that younger version of ourselves, it's because we needed something in life. And so we were just experimenting with everything to see what is going to fulfill the void that we didn't even know that we're missing. And so we do things, we experiment with life. And a lot of the things that in hindsight that I did that I would chop it up to like so cringy, I feel so like there was so much lack of self-worth there are things that I did because I was trying to fill a void that I was
Mm,
missing. And so that's also how I like to look at that component of life is who was I at that point in time and what was going on in my life that triggered me to do that thing. And then
mm,
from this adult perspective that I now have, what was that person missing that she was doing that to fill a certain whatever way she wanted to fill, right?
mhm.
So yeah, I mean we only know how much we know. And there's so much of life to still learn.
And it's interesting the way that it comes up as an adult and in your later life, these different trigger points and these different feelings that feel so fresh and that feel so personal. And when you do kind of follow the thread of it, it's like it was a 5-year old who didn't understand that them showing up in their full bodied self and in such a beautiful way that whatever adult at the time, whatever teacher, whatever peer maybe mocked you or told you to cover that up, they themselves wanted to show up that way.
Yeah.
They themselves were projecting their own feelings onto it.
Their own feelings, their own internal landscape, the own way that they see the world. And like how I kind of said in the beginning, each one of us are navigating life in their own perspective, their own timeline. And a lot of people, in my opinion, are waking up to having a deeper sense of compassion, a deeper sense of alignment, deeper sense of community, the ability to like emotionally see somebody as who they really are, not throw their own shade or their own perspectives onto people. And I just kind of like to say maybe a lot of people are awakening at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's been a subtle awakening maybe since the onset of COVID. I think a lot of people started to actually wake up to what kind of spiritual people that they are and how close to, I'll just use the word God, all of consciousness that we really are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's helping shift a lot of people's perspective. But yeah, there are a lot of people who still are very narrow minded. And I'll just use my husband as an example. I love him so much. He is my biggest lesson in life. Okay. My karma, whatever my karma is that I need to work through, he's one of my biggest lessons in life. And the thing to know about people is you can't change anybody. You can't do, people are on their own journey. And that kind of maybe ties back to my whole create oneself forever story that I started with. People are on their own journey. They're going to do things in their own timeline. And you cannot influence people to be, think, do, feel any certain way. All you can do is show up wholeheartedly as yourself, and maybe parts of yourself will rub off onto the people in your surrounding, your community, your friend group, your circle, my husband, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that consistency of showing up as that person who is aligned, who is in tune, who is driven by love or compassion or whatever it is, then little bits and pieces of you will maybe eventually start rubbing off onto that person. And the way that I see it is that they start to feel maybe a little uncomfortable with how consistently you're showing up, that they start examining their own selves.
Mm-hmm. Lead by example.
Lead by example. That's it.
I would love for you to discuss more about create oneself forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had this whole idea that I was supposed to create something digitally, whatever it is, some kind of virtual offering, and sell it forever so I can make residual income. And I think what happened is that I got so wrapped up in the whole social media world, way too much consumption of social media, that I started picking up other people's goals and trying to make them my own goal. Social media goes through ebbs and flows, like influxes of digital marketing, faceless marketing, whatever it is, it's the flavor of the year. People kind of like
The week, the month, yeah.
whatever it is, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm missing out. Oh my God, all these people are side hustling, making $5,000 doing this a month. And I know better because I work in software engineering and marketing. I work for a software development company and I know actually what it takes to make money. But then you kind of get caught up in the other side of things, right? And so I had this whole concept in my head, right? Once, self forever. I had an Instagram account, that the one that you and I kind of met on, that was all dedicated to manifestation. When you found me, I had archived like 90% of my posts, 90% of my account, which is why I was trying to start fresh and trying to start over, but the audience wasn't the right audience for my lifestyles. So I kind of switched. But create one's self forever ended up being an opportunity for me to look at my own personal landscape and my own personal goals, and to really try to understand, where is this concept coming from? Why do I think this is my responsibility? And really what I learned, that was not my goal. I don't give a shit like making money on social media because I have a full-time career and I really like my job and I have a pretty good job. And it's okay to have a traditional job where you work at a desk. And I think for me, like, I rather just tell my stories and share and connect with people in that organic way without them having to worry if I'm going to try to sell them something, because I'm not. Like, I don't want to sell you anything. I just want to share. And if you're interested, you're going to stick around. And if not, then you're going to swipe to the next.
Honoring your evolution and that ever changing aspect.
Yeah, and it's changing. It changes. Like, the core of who I am will always be the core. Like, the things that I enjoy, I like good food. I like nice clothes. I wear all black. I love good music. I love to travel. I love art. I have 100 plants in my house. I'm always going to work out and move my body. I'm always going to learn something. And then I'm always going to work through my struggle. Like at the core, that's who I am, but it changes and evolves. And that's where growth happens.
That acceptance of the change where you can allow that growth to happen. Who you are today, who we are tomorrow is not going to be the same as who we were 2 weeks ago and who we're going to be 2 months from now. It's always changing, and that baseline, that core is you. It's true, and that's always going to be your truth.
Yeah. I mean, I might not always wear all black. We'll see what happens. But, you know, I'll give you another example. My left arm here, I had been collecting tattoos on this arm since I was 19 years old. I joined the military when I was 18. I was in the army for 9 years. And I tattooed different things on my arm for different meaning in my life. And I'm sitting back about a year and a half ago and I look at this arm and I'm like, nothing on here represents who I am or what I stand for anymore. So I talked to my tattoo artist and I'm like, boom, we need to do a whole cover up. And so over the last year and a half, I've been getting a cover up on this left arm. And that's the thing with evolution. We're somebody at this point in time of our life, but fast forward 15 years, 20 years later, you're not going to be that same person. So at the core, I love tattoos, but these things that used to represent me aren't who I am anymore.
Oh, that's so sick. In the unbalance and chaos of it all, how do you return to your own baseline? How do you return to yourself?
When I know I'm completely detached from myself, the dream that I had the other day, I woke up, I was like, I don't feel like I'm me. I feel like I have some kind of like parasitic entity that's in like it's such a gross kind of description, but I'm like, this energy that I'm feeling inside of my body is not my energy. And the way personally that I return back home to myself is through some kind of somatic process. And so that's a very activating breath work, like a circular breath work where you're breathing fast and you're feeling kind of tingly in the body. And then I always like to add some tapping or toning, like, or I'll get a pillow and I'll scream into the pillow. When I don't feel like myself, it's because I have energy in my body that isn't my energy. And so it's a very physical practice where I get into the body, where I get into the breath and I move it around and I release it. And it could be a very short, like 15-minute practice. I use the Open app. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but
Yeah.
they're on Instagram. But I use the Open app and they have a lot of really good, quick 5-10 minute practices. And I'll just shake it out, or I'll get on my treadmill and I'll go for, like, I have a desk treadmill at my desk, and I'll just walk for an hour and a half until I'm like out of my head. But usually when I'm not feeling myself, it's because I'm too much in here thinking about so many thoughts and ideas that don't belong to me. So it means when I'm over consuming either content or
Mm.
I'm reading too much, and that I need to get back into my body. Where I live in Washington State, it's the winter time and it's a little cold, but I also like to get into nature. Nature is a really healing, soothing tool for coming back home to yourself.
I've noticed recently when I am feeling these things, being able to kind of understand, okay, this isn't me, whether I can name it in the moment or not, just acknowledging that it's not mine, and then looking at myself in the mirror has been incredible. It's been really therapeutic. It unearths a lot. Being able to just look into your eyes. And I'm not gonna lie, it's challenging, especially when you first start really looking at yourself so sober in that way. And your eyes hold so much of not only your own history, but if you believe it, your past life histories as well. So you feel that when you are looking into your eyes and just starting to say, I might not feel okay right now, but I've got you. I love you. It's
Mhm.
okay. It's okay to not feel okay. And continuing that dialogue, and you just start crying and you just start feeling something that you didn't feel before, and something shifted and something moved, and holding yourself for that personal liberation is beautiful.
A good cathartic release, especially if you can let those tears out, I guarantee always gonna feel better at the end of a good cry. And
Hmm.
whether the cry is emotional because you've had a realization, or you're just like, "Ah, I feel so good now," and just the tears are coming out for whatever reason. You don't necessarily always have to name and
Hmm.
pinpoint and identify what you're experiencing and going through.
Hmm.
It's just that breath of fresh air and coming home back to the self.
Yeah. What different practices do you implement to assist yourself in surrendering that trust to yourself? If somebody's kind of starting that process, that journey, what would you recommend to them?
You have to start small to build that self trust. You have to start small. And maybe it is just a little change of your routine in the morning. What I found to be very helpful for being consistent with my meditation and my breathwork practice is waking up 45 minutes earlier. So maybe you have to go to bed a little bit earlier, but setting your alarm clock 45 minutes earlier, sitting down, clearing your space, and just being with yourself to do a quick 5-minute breathwork practice and then go into a 10-minute meditation practice. Find a song that you like on Spotify and play it. And at the end of the song, you know that your meditation is done. Maybe you want to go a little bit longer. So you let it just kind of be, you don't have any audio in the background. You just can sit with your eyes closed and tune into your heart and breathe. I think that's a really accessible way to start building that self trust. Try it for a week. Maybe you want to take the weekends off. That's okay. You can do that too. I usually find that my practice changes on the weekend, and just having acceptance for your practice and know that it doesn't have to look perfect. I have 3 dogs. One's jumping on my lap, one's like tugging at my hair, and the other one's barking at me while I'm meditating. And it's really sometimes just kind of taking in life as it is at that very moment and being like, damn, this is what life really is, and being okay with that. But my big, I guess my one recommendation is just try something different. Do something that you've never done before that your intuition starts to tell you to do. Mine was my intuition was like, you need to start baking. So I started baking, and it's been a fun journey for me. But yeah, you can always just start with waking up 45 minutes earlier and getting a little practice in. Try it for 5 days and see where it takes you.
Hmm. Just
Um,
trying,
just try.
literally just trying.
All you can do is experiment with life. I like to run experiments on myself. Like, what am I going to lose from running an experiment on myself? Right? My current experiment is baking sourdough bread. Okay. I have no idea what I'm doing. I got some starter from my tattoo artist. I'm baking loaves, and I'm just going to keep baking and see how I can get the flavors to taste. And that requires me to dedicate time to nurturing my bread. But, another experiment you can do is read 5 pages a day. It doesn't have to be a lot, or work out for 20 minutes a day, or replace something that you're eating. Maybe you have a cookie addiction like me. Maybe instead of having a cookie, eat some fruit that's in season. It's just a little experiment. I like to run little experiments, and then you can even get your notebook and log your experiment down. Just be a scientist of your life, because
Hmm.
what else are you going to do?
What do you have to lose?
What do you have to lose? You can make excuses, or you can take action. I know. It sounds so easy, but it's not always easy. It's not always easy.
I know. I know. It's funny because it is, but it isn't.
Yeah. I think it's perspective too, the way that you frame things, right? And that's why I like to use the experimentation frame, because it's not forever. You have a hypothesis. If I do this, then this will happen. If I do this for 5 weeks, this will happen. Okay. And maybe the hypothesis is, if I work out for 6 weeks, I am going to build some muscle in my body, or I'm going to lean out, I'm going to have a nice ass, or whatever it is, that you're looking for in your body. And then you take a measurement, a little tape measure, measure that booty once every week. And then you see by the end of 6 weeks, your hypothesis was correct, right? If I wake up 30 minutes early every day and meditate for 15 minutes, I'll have more clarity throughout the day, or I'll be more in tune with my heart and my intuition. And you just take little measurements, right? You just kind of check in with yourself and see what's going on. Maybe it's wrong, your hypothesis is wrong, or maybe it's right on point. And so the more, again, the more trust you build with yourself, the easier it is going to be for you to try those experiments out.
I read a quote and it stuck with me, and you just reminded me, but it said, "You can't fail at an experiment. You can't. You literally cannot." So let that be your mindset shift for anybody listening that wants to, I don't know, try rock climbing. That's so cool. Me, I want to try rock climbing. Like let that be your motivation. Starting small, holding yourself in the experimentation and being like, who knows what's going to happen, and building that trust with yourself.
You're not going to fail at an experiment. You just need to do it, test it out, and see what happens. And that self trust will build once you make it to the end of that phase.
Mm-hmm. To conclude our conversation of experimentation, what would you share to somebody who is looking to step into this next chapter of life and of experimenting themselves? What would you tell your younger self who's afraid?
The whole point of life is to try life out. Like, that's the whole point. And you don't have to be good at everything that you do. And you can have as many goals, you can have as many hobbies, as many passions as you like. And I think the whole concept of life is to try it all out, to see what feels good for you. And so if you're about to go into an experimentation phase, maybe you sit down for 10, 15 minutes and you just place your hands on your heart and you connect to the breath in and the breath out. And the thing that pops up in your mind is the thing that you pull the thread on and that you experiment with. It doesn't have to be a long experiment, it could be 2, 3 weeks. And then at the end of that, you sit down and you do it again. Tune in to yourself, because yourself, your higher self, is always going to guide you in the direction that you need to go.
And so it is.
And so it is.